So fairly recently, a fairly prominent fitness news outlet did an article titled Why CrossFit Games Athletes Have Six-Pack Abs and You Don't. And I thought, what a cool topic. I'm going to put my own spin on this. In this episode of the podcast, I'm going to share my perspective, maybe shake some things up a little bit as I share why I think CrossFit Games have six-pack abs and you don't. Tune in and take notes.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
Guys, it's no secret that CrossFit Games athletes have those well-defined six-pack abs due to a combination of factors. And is it something that you can also achieve? So in this episode of the podcast, I'm going to outline the factors that lead to these games athletes having amazing, well-defined midsections, the abs of Adonis, or the core of a Greek goddess. How is it possible? What do they do? We'll outline it in this podcast, and then maybe we'll help to identify some ways that you too can see those same results. Because if there's a recipe for it, that means that you can also cook the dish and get the results, proverbially speaking. So let's jump right in. So the first obvious driver is the training regimen of the CrossFit Games athletes. All CrossFitters, and especially Games athletes, engage in like these highly constantly varied workouts that target the entire body, which includes the core, through our functional movements and our high intensity stuff. We're mixing in gymnastics and cardio and body weight exercises in high volume and at high intensity. We're getting a very potent stimulus to our bodies with these functional movements, meaning that these highly potent exercises drive a very powerful response in the body. That's the first one. The second, I really want to hone in on the core-centric exercises in particular. We have a lot of exercises in CrossFit world that target the core muscles, both some obviously and some covertly. Your movements like your squats, your deadlifts, your presses, those are more like covert core exercises. They definitely work the core. It's just less obvious on the surface. But then you have other gymnastic exercises like your toes to bar, your GHD sit-ups. All of those require significant core stabilization, core strength, and are really powerful activators of the entire abdominal complex. That's a big one. And the CrossFit Games athletes are doing a ton of this core work, both in their main programs and their accessory. Point 3 is consistency and frequency. CrossFit Games athletes train consistently, frequently, sometimes multiple times a day. And then that ensures that their muscles, especially the abs, are always being challenged, always being developed, always being given a stimulus and a reason to change. The training stimulus in aggregate of our constantly varied functional movement done at high intensity is a stimulus for having amazing six-pack abs. That's the first thing. The second is disciplined nutrition. We've all heard before, abs are made in the kitchen, and you cannot out-exercise a bad diet. And that's generally true for all regular, normal humans that have a regular, normal metabolism. So let's talk about clean eating for a second. CrossFit Games athletes typically follow strict nutrition plans that emphasize whole and unprocessed foods. While there are exceptions, generally speaking, if you study the healthy eating patterns of Games athletes, they're including lean proteins, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, healthy fats. They are avoiding sugar and avoiding ultra-processed foods that we discussed in another episode of the podcast, really clean eating. The second factor here under disciplined nutrition is macronutrient balance. When we talk about macronutrient balance, we're talking about the balance of proteins, dietary fats, and carbohydrates, because all of us, whether we're Games athletes or not, we all need all three. It really supports your muscle growth and keeps your body fat low when you have the right balance of these three macronutrients. which is easier to do if you're tracking it. And many games athletes actively track everything that they eat as well. Every protein, fat, and carbohydrate is accounted for and portioned exactly right. This is the second thing. The third is hydration, and then related to that, recovery. Proper hydration and nutrition are crucial for your recovery and maintaining muscle definition. We know that CrossFit Games athletes pay a lot of attention to their hydration levels as well as recovery nutrition, because that helps them to optimize their performance, optimize muscle repair, helps them recover from difficult workouts faster so you can come in the next day and train again. Let's talk about an obvious third factor here, genetics. There's no way around it. Some people have a genetic predisposition to having different body fat distribution, or what muscles are defined and how muscle definition is achieved. Some individuals naturally store less fat in their abdominal region and can achieve visible abs more easily. This is certainly the case for at least some CrossFit Games athletes. They got genetics in their favor. Another thing here is muscle fiber composition. The proportion of fast twitch muscle fibers that you have to slow twitch muscle fibers can also influence how you look. It can impact muscle size and definition. Have you ever seen those memes of sprinters and their bodies next to long distance runners, elite long distance runners and their bodies? It really highlights the difference in how it looks to have a higher proportion of fast twitch muscle fibers versus slow twitch muscle fibers. So just another thought or consideration here. Point number 4, if we're talking about, hey, why do CrossFit Games athletes have those amazing abs? Point number 4, low body fat percentage. And this is kind of like this is like an outcome or a result of the factors before. When we talk about fat loss, visible abs are primarily a result of low body fat. CrossFit athletes achieve low body fat percentages through smart training, smart nutrition, which allows their abdominal muscles to be more visible. Similarly and related, they often have a higher metabolic rate than their not CrossFit counterparts, because the intense workouts of CrossFit athletes, it does stoke and raise your metabolic rate, not just when you're in the gym, but also when you're out of the gym at rest for several hours or even the entire rest of the day afterward. And the increase in your metabolic rate from CrossFit workouts aids fat loss and contributes to that lean physique appearance that they have. That's point 4, the outcome, low body fat percentage. Point number 5, why CrossFit Games athletes have those six-pack abs, maybe you don't, is lifestyle and recovery. What do I mean? I believe that sleep is one of those things that impacts everything. Proper rest and sleep are just essential for muscle recovery and having your optimal hormone profile. Testosterone is affected by your sleeping pattern, and cortisol is affected by your sleeping pattern. All of these things impact your fat loss and your muscle growth, and both of those things impact what kind of abs you have when you pull up your shirt. Also, stress management. Managing stress levels is one of those things that makes a difference in your cortisol levels, and cortisol has been associated with fat storage, retention of body fat, promoting fat storage, especially around the midsection. So your ability to effectively manage stress is one of the drivers to your success or failure in cutting fat from your midline. So to kind of recap what we've talked about here, point number 1, why they have six-pack abs, the training regimen, the methodology. They get a lot of it. They get a lot of exposure to a very effective fitness program. Number 2, disciplined nutrition. There's no way around it. Point number 3, genetics can definitely help. Point number 4, low body fat percentage as one of the sum totals, as one of the outcomes of the former we talked about. Point number 5, lifestyle and recovery. And these are some of the reasons why CrossFit Games athletes may have six-pack abs and you don't. But the good news is all of these things that we've talked about, they are all entirely replicable, meaning that you can actually achieve your own version of these results by mimicking the healthy eating, the training that games athletes do, although within the constraints of the time and the output that you can do practically in your everyday life. Now, that said, if you're kind of new to this CrossFit thing, it is helpful to have a CrossFit coach to guide you along so that you know what this looks like for you. What is your exciting, effective CrossFit journey? How does it look for you in the context of your real life? What do you need to do now? How can you get started? What is your safe entry point? How can you get the results, but in a very practical and safe way? You can learn more about CrossFit Edwardsville on all the socials. And then when you're ready, come visit us at CrossFitEdwardsville.com. You can book a no-sweat conversation, talk to one of our coaches. It's free. But for now, we thank you guys for the gift of your time and your attention. If you have any thoughts or reactions, why do you think CrossFit Games athletes have six-pack abs? Leave a comment down below to share your thoughts with us. And we'll talk to you there in the comments. But for now, we'll see you guys in the next episode of the podcast.